Now, over the past few days, I have been having a little bit of a fiddle with my upcoming draft, and in today's video, I'm going to showcase it to you guys and give you all the important data, facts, and statistics you need to build the best draft ahead of game week 1. Now, before we dive into today's video, if you are new around here, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as we are trying to hit 6,000 subscribers by the start of the new Premier League season. It'd be absolutely amazing if we could do that as well. Let's start off where I always like to start off with my draft and wildcard videos. It is the fixtures. I'm obviously kind of going to just give you a quick run through of which teams I would be looking to target. We've kind of covered this quite hefty already over the course of pre-season, but for me, Aston Villa, great fixtures to be targeting. Chelsea after match day 1. Crystal Palace have got a decent set of opening fixtures. Everton defensive wise, obviously the likes of Mikolenko definitely going to be entering the radar. Fulham have got some really good fixtures after match day 1 as well. Liverpool probably the best set of opening fixtures we are going to find this season. Manchester City as well, some really decent ones in there, surrounded by a couple of difficult ones, but overall still a really decent set. Newcastle as well, with Southampton at home, Bournemouth away, Wolves away, some great fixtures in there for them. Nottingham Forest probably the standout of the kind of mid to lower teams down the bottom half of the table for standout fixtures. Spurs a good opening too, and everyone else I probably wouldn't be looking at too heavily. Right, now we've quickly covered that. Like I said, I've done more more in-depth kind of reviews of fixtures on other videos, so go and check those out if you're looking for kind of more in-depth knowledge. But that was just kind of a quick run through. Let's move on. Let's take a look at clean sheet data. This is coming from 11ify. This is obviously the projected number of clean sheets that teams are expected to get over the opening 6 game weeks, and of course their percentage chance of keeping a clean sheet in each of the match days. As you can see, last season's top defensive team, Arsenal, for most clean sheets, and of course Raya with the Golden Glove. They are top for clean sheets over the opening 6 game weeks. 2.48 predicted clean sheets. Some really good numbers in there, despite some pretty difficult fixtures for Arsenal as well. Obviously they've got Villa away, Tottenham away, and Manchester City away within their opening 5 game weeks. Obviously the standout fixtures that I think are dragging this up are obviously the home fixtures that they've got. They've got Leicester at home, Brighton at home, and Wolves at home. Obviously, if you can navigate those tricky and more difficult fixtures, I definitely think Arsenal could realistically probably get 3 clean sheets out of the opening 6 game weeks as well. So very good value, I think, there. You know, there's definitely some worth consideration, but as we'll come on to talk about with defenders a little bit more in today's video, I think maybe, though, I'm still leaning against going for a Saliba, a Gabriel, or a Raya, just in my personal opinion. But definitely, if you want to just back the clean sheet data, Arsenal are there for the top teams. Moving us on to second place, it is going to be Manchester City. Again, I think Gvardiol is probably the top pick. They've got some pretty decent home fixtures coming up as well over the opening 6. So Gvardiol for me feels like an absolute must. Attacking prowess and decent clean sheet data. Feels like a player that should realistically probably be about 50% owned, but he probably won't be. So we're going to all be able to kind of get on him. And for the first few weeks, I probably would say get a couple points out of him, a little bit of rank. After that, though, he's probably going to become essential and pretty much going to have 100% effective ownership. Liverpool are in there as well with their decent fixtures, so that bodes quite well for Trent Alexander-Arnold. And then obviously the next kind of plethora of teams is teams that are kind of more towards the mid-range. Obviously Everton, we spoke about, they have some pretty decent rotating fixtures, and if you could probably pair them with 1 or 2 of the other kind of mid-table to kind of top half teams within this selection, I think you could have a decent chance of picking up quite a few clean sheets over the opening 6 match days. So obviously Mikolenko the standout at 4.5, Ezri Konsa and obviously Pal Torres, they're probably the standouts for Aston Villa. Maddison, if we see him getting decent minutes over pre-season, could be a shout. Anderson for Crystal Palace is obviously the key one. Muniz the differential at 5 million if you're looking for a little bit more attacking flair. 4.5 for Brighton, you obviously have Lewis Dunk and Verbergen potentially in goal as well. And Fulham, I think you've got Castagna and Robinson, who are both very decent shouts. For me, a team I think there's probably a little bit maybe being done in here by the 11ify data is Nottingham Forest, all the way down in 9th. They've got a very decent set of opening fixtures, and if you look at XG conceded from last season, they were 4th. They were 4th out of all teams, so it basically went Arsenal, City, Liverpool, than Forest. So they're a really, really good defence. Definitely one I would be considering with my opening draft, especially if you can get in there with a 4.5. I know there's the goalkeeper situation as well, but that one for me looks a little bit too hectic, so I'm not going to touch it and would rather focus on maybe like a Murillo, a Bolly, and Aina. They're probably my top picks out of that one. And then obviously down the bottom section, teams I would be looking to avoid, the likes of Wolves, Ipswich, West Ham, Leicester. I mean, the 4 million defenders, they're fine and you can just rotate around them, but if you're looking for a starting defender, probably not worth any consideration. Manchester United down in 15th as well. I actually think the fixtures are a little bit more difficult than people are giving credit for Manchester United. I know there's quite a few greens in there, but I don't think it's going to be easy as people are suggesting. Fulham beat Manchester United at Old Trafford last season. Brighton's a difficult place to go. United seem to have like some kind of curse against them there as well. Southampton probably is the standout fixture, but then looking at the other ones as well, Liverpool, no. Palace, if they start the season as well as they finished last season, sorry, they'll be a real force. And then Tottenham as well. So I think people that are going for Martinez, probably worth avoiding. They were also one of the worst teams for XG conceded and shots faced last year. And obviously with injuries and losing key players like Varane, who I think was a little bit daft to let go. I think defensively, him and Martinez could have formed a good partnership this season, but they've gone without him. And I think, again, they probably will be struggling in that defensive area. So probably a team I would be looking to avoid. Right, let's move on to some data from Rob T FPL. Obviously, if you watched any of my Euros content, I absolutely slammed this guy's content down your throats. And for very good reason. He makes some incredible stuff, so go and check him out on Twitter. This is projected goal involvement, so over the course of the season via SpreadX and obviously the betting markets. And interestingly, this is kind of why I'm a little bit hesitant on the Arsenal defenders. There's only Ben White in here who's at 6.5, so not really worth going for in my opinion. The rest of them though, the Salibas, the Gabriel, do not make this list. They're just not there, are they? So, you know, the betting odds don't have them down as, you know, being reliable players to go and get goals and assists. Now, I know the clean sheets are probably still going to be pretty decent for Arsenal this season, but obviously goal involvements for defenders are where they usually make up their mega hauls as well. Clean sheets, very, very good part of it. But I just find it very interesting that the projected goal involvement doesn't feature the likes of Saliba or Gabriel, which is, you know, a little bit crazy, you know, so maybe, you know, despite the good clean sheet data, it might not be worth going for these defenders. I think, interestingly, though, defenders that have the high attacking potential with decent clean sheet odds, probably a little bit more of a way to go with this game. Obviously, Trent topping the list, Ped Porro with a decent set of opening fixtures as well. We can see Gvardiol's in there as well. So I think it's going for these players that have the potential to go and get attacking returns, as we can see with the data here, and using the data in the last section with clean sheet data to find the ultimate defenders that I think justify that elevated price point of above 5.5 million. So the likes of Trent, Porro, Robertson, Mattison, if he can break into that team as well, Gvardiol, these players that are playing for top teams, have decent clean sheet data over the opening couple game weeks, and have the attacking potential and predicted data to suggest that they're going to get attacking returns as well. So that for me is where I think I rather would be looking, to be honest. Some other standouts in there, obviously Aït-Nouri when the Wolves fixtures turn decent. Him at 4.5 million could be a very, very decent shout. And obviously a team I did mention in the last section was Fulham, and Robinson, interestingly, features quite highly on this list as well. So just something to potentially bear in mind with our defender picks. But that's kind of enough data so far. We're obviously going to move into my team, and then right at the end, we are going to talk about captaincy and obviously rotating around premium players. Wasting no time and diving straight into my new and improved draft. Let's start off with the goalkeepers first. We are going to go for Henderson and Bentley. Now let me talk you through my thought process with these two. Crystal Palace last season were 5th for XG conceded. I do think Henderson is going to be the first choice goalkeeper. Obviously they've got Johnson around the club, but it looks like some clubs potentially could be coming in for him. I think the other goalkeeper I would be eyeing up is Flecken. It doesn't really seem like he's got any competition, and then we could very easily just have both Brentford goalkeepers. And as I've alluded to in some of my other videos, if you've not watched any of those, go back and check them, as we did more in-depth data and research looking at goalkeeper picks. I basically just said I'm going to go with a 4.5 and just hold them throughout the whole season. A lot of the goalkeepers last year that did well around that 4.5 to 5 million price range picked up a lot of their points against top 6 sides, and that's usually where people would be rotating their goalkeepers, putting in a goalkeeper that realistically last year would have been playing the likes likes of Sheffield United or Luton. But for me, I'm just going to go with it. I'm going to go with this theory for this year. We're going to see how it plays out. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, then obviously we'll go back to rotating goalkeepers for next season. So the other goalkeeper as well is Bentley. 4 million, played a few games last season. Jose Sarr seems a little bit injury prone for a goalkeeper. Quite a few games that he missed, so I'm hoping that Bentley could be the one. Obviously, I've seen Turner's quite a popular pick at 4 million as well, but he's a player I would actually recommend avoiding as well. I think he's around 28% owned, and when people go for that wild card, and if they want to get a second goalkeeper, he'll be one of the ones that is flogged out immediately. Could see a price decrease, and obviously will lead to you then having a goalkeeper at 3.9, 3.8, and losing a little bit of team value, which is all dependent, very later on in the season when you need it for certain players when they start rising and increasing. Moving on into our backline. Now, we're going to start off with a very controversial one. It's Kwanzaa, I believe how you pronounce his name, Kwanzaa. Let me know if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly in the chat. I did Google it. That's what it said on Google. So if that's wrong, I do apologise. But he's playing for Liverpool. Finished the season quite well. Played a lot of minutes for Liverpool at the back end of the season. He's also starting a lot of games in pre-season. Now, I know there's obviously players still to come back from international duty, but Konate's there. Like, it's not like Konate's just not playing games. He is. Obviously, they've got Van Dijk to come back in, and I would imagine the centre-back pairing is going to be Van Dijk and Konate. But I think with the Liverpool fixtures, I think for the time being, while he's playing decent minutes in pre-season, if he can continue those going into the kind of the latter games of pre-season, I think he could be a real hidden gem at 4.5 million. Gets me away into a team, as we saw with the projected data for clean sheets, a really, really good set of data. So I think that one could be potentially going under the radar. Obviously, there's plenty of other good 4.5 million options we can very easily switch to if obviously his minutes diminish closer we get to the start of the season, but might be one of my little gambles in defence as well. Next up is going to be Murillo. Obviously, I've been kind of flirting around with the Forest defenders. I've had Aina in one of my drafts, I've had Bolly, and now I'm with Murillo. I saw a post on Twitter talking about, obviously it was like clean sheet data and then it was like expected goal data, and Murillo was above both Bolly and Aina, so that's why we've selected him for the 4.5 one. As we saw, pretty good expected data as well, and the fixtures for Nottingham Forest: Bournemouth, Southampton, Wolves, Brighton, Fulham. They've obviously got Liverpool in match day 4, but luckily for us, the 2.4 million defenders can obviously cover off that one, or we could very easily take him out and move to another team as well. That's the beauty of these 4.5 million defenders. There's plenty of quality from each side as well that we can keep just kind of flipping and rotating around our 4.5 million defenders and having a pretty decent set that kind of can just flip around and, you know, just rotate for the good fixtures. Very, very simple. Moving on to our final defender. I kind of alluded to it in the last section. I do feel he's going to be verging on the word essential come the start of the season. It is going to be Gvardiol, as we saw from Rob T FPL's data. He's pretty high up in the projected long-term goal involvements throughout the course of the season. City as well, over the opening 6 weeks, have decent fixtures and pretty good clean sheet data. So for this one, feels like an absolute no-brainer to me. Our other defenders are Barco, who's been seeing pretty decent minutes in pre-season, with Estupiñán looking like he might be out for a few months as well, who could be a decent shout at 4 million. Rotates quite nicely with the other defenders we've got on our side. And then I wanted to go for an Ipswich defender. Now, the reason I wanted to go for this is obviously I don't expect Ipswich to keep many clean sheets, but again, it's all about those rotating fixtures. The opening 2 are pretty poor with Liverpool and City, but then they got Fulham, Brighton, Southampton, Villa and West Ham. So if I do need to call on one of my 4 million defenders, I don't think it's a bad shout. Johnson as well could be one of the only 4 million right backs, wing backs, him and Barco, obviously both fitting in that category. Obviously there are a plethora of 4 million options as well in the game, so we're not kind of, you know, short of quality in that regard. So that was the defence. Let's move on into the midfield, and this is the first time Bukayo Saka has entered one of my drafts, and you might be thinking, Tom, what's changed? You were so against him. I'm still not 100% convinced. I've taken a little bit more look at the fixtures, the predicted points coming up, and as you'll see, there's obviously been a big shift away from kind of certain players that I've kind of been more hot on and more cold on. Saka, for me, the opening 3 fixtures, the Villa one's not great, but then you get in 2 decent home fixtures where I would imagine Arsenal to win quite comfortably, Wolves and Brighton, I think they could win those opening 2 games. Then it's 2 back-to-back very difficult, hard games for them. Not easy in the slightest, is it? Tottenham and Manchester City. But you feel if Arsenal have any probability of winning the league this year, it is if they go and beat Manchester City. Then it's a lovely run. 2 back-to-back newly promoted teams at home. My only concern with Bukayo Saka is obviously he did feature quite a lot in the Euros, was kind of dealing with injury issues throughout the course of the season last year, and maybe that is going to play on him. But it looks like Arteta is going to have him back for game week 1 and probably will play pretty good minutes over the opening couple game weeks anyway, because rain or shine, he still manages to play him. So that's the way it goes with that one. So it is what it is. Moving on to our next midfielder, it is going to be Son. I think the opening 2 fixtures are really, really decent. And the reason we've gone for Son is I want to get Phil Foden. Like, I do want to have Phil Foden. But with the comments from Pep about KDB and Foden obviously being doubts for the opening few weeks, I think it's all dependent on that Community Shield game. If Foden plays in it, I think Son drops out and Foden comes in because it gives me cover for that Ipswich game in game week 2. As obviously, you're kind of guessing that there's going to be no Haaland in this draft as well. Son isn't going to be the captain for this week. I forgot to change it round. It's going to be Mohamed Salah and Son will be the vice. Salah's predicted points are better, and I think, you know, he's got a pretty decent game week 1 record, there we go, against newly promoted sides as well. So he's obviously going to be the captain for this one, but Son's going to start off in the team. Obviously, like I said, if Foden does play in the Community Shield, I do think it'll be him that will start in here over Son. But for the opening 2 game weeks, it gives me a little bit of time to figure out what the situation is with Cole Palmer, whether or not he's worth picking up at his elevated price point, or in Cuckoo, still a pretty decent option that potentially could cover him off, or whether or not Phil Foden is available for those extra weeks, and then we can easily bring him in. So I think he's a nice placeholder, puts the money into the midfield and gives me a decent set of opening fixtures, and only 11% owned could be a very, very nice differential. Obviously, we alluded to Mohamed Salah already. I think the opening fixtures for Liverpool are pretty decent, and with us not having Erling Haaland, he represents a great captaincy option every single week. Pretty good for predictive points as well, and has been smashing it in pre-season so far under Arne Slot. Moving on to our next midfielder, it is going to be Anthony Gordon. Now, there are rumours that he might be moving to Liverpool, and if that's the case, then he'll drop out for Eze. But at the moment, it is going to be Anthony Gordon. It's a great set of opening fixtures for Newcastle, in my opinion. Tottenham at home is not even the worst fixture. They absolutely demolish Tottenham every single season at home, do Newcastle. Newly promoted side, was the second highest scoring player for points at home scored last season as well. So this one, to me, feels like a bit of a no-brainer. Next up is going to be Gibbs White. Now, there's some really, really intriguing options at 6.5 million. I've covered them in one of my other videos. It was the ranking every kind of cheap midfielder, and Gibbs White came out top. He just did. And Cuckoo was second. I think it was Brennan Johnson in third, but obviously with this draft, we've got Son already covering that off. So Gibbs White for me, 6.5 million. What he does is he has a great set of opening 3 fixtures that allows us to give us a little bit of time to see what the likes of Rodgers, to see what the likes of Liverpool's cheap midfielders are like. Obviously, it's a bit sly. Elliott. It also gives us time to see if Nkuku's going to be the real deal this season, or whether or not it's just kind of a pre-season curve. Again, for me, he's nailed. He's settled. 12 assists last season, 4 goals. Really, really good data as well. He put up per 90 last season as well. And he's the key talisman for 6.5 million for a Nottingham Forest side. He potentially could be on penalties as well this year. So for me, feels like a little bit of a no-brainer and gives us a very, very good midfield. I can't lie about that one. It is a ridiculously strong midfield in my opinion. Right, let's move on to our 2 forwards. It is going to be Ollie Watkins and it is going to be Alexander Isak. Both lads put up immense numbers last season. Watkins with 19 goals and 14 assists. Isak with 20 goals last season and 0.83 goals per 90, which is absolutely ridiculous for him. Again, offers me a decent differential captaincy option if I wanted to go down that route in match day 1. I do expect him to do extremely well over the opening 5 fixtures. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Alexander Isak. And again, I think with his ownership, he's probably not going to pick me up many points and ranks. He's just going to be one of those players that I think you're just going to have realistically with the opening set of fixtures and the form that he showed. So for me, I'm going with him. He's not, I don't think he's left a single draft so far this season, and I don't think he will come the start of the season unless he picks up an injury or anything like that. Moving on to Ollie Watkins. Now, this is an interesting one. I've seen, he's quite a popular pick, but at the same time, people in the FPL community are doubting whether or not he's going to be a good pick. Obviously, they've got that Arsenal fixture in match day 2, which is going to be pretty hard, but Villa actually did the double over Arsenal last season. Outside of that, though, they're playing 2 newly promoted sides within the opening 6 game weeks, both of them away, but there's some pretty decent home fixtures in there as well. Everton and Wolves to go with that. And my fear is, I think, we could be looking at, not having Ollie Watkins in our drafts for the first few weeks, but he could very easily cook over that time period. And then once the fixtures do start to tail away, Bournemouth's ones pick up. So you could very easily just make that switch to Dominic Solanke and, continue with these high quality forwards that play for kind of lesser teams, but are still managing to bag goals for absolute fun. So that's obviously the draft so far. Stewart on the bench is a 4.5 million, might get some minutes. I think with Ben Burton and Diaz signing, not going to be as kind of secure, I would say, in that regard. But that's the team so far. Obviously no Erling Haaland, but let's take a look at some more data and talk about potential captaincy options over the opening 5 game weeks. Now, obviously, as you just saw with my most recent updated draft, I have gone without Erling Haaland. It's the first time I've done it, and there's a few reasons why I'm starting to think that way. Now, I still think over the opening 5 game weeks, as we can see here, there's 2 weeks where he is the standout captain above everybody else. Arguably match day 3 as well, but there's some pretty decent fixtures in there for other players. So 2 and 4 are going to be the standout weeks for Erling Haaland, where he's going to be the captain. But I was looking last season at games where he scored 2 or picked up more assists, kind of like a goal and assist. And I think it was only 3-4 games where he actually picked up like a decent mega haul, where I'd feel he'd actually justify being the captain and obviously being a player that would justify his 15 million price point. Outside of that, it was pretty just standard, a goal here, a goal there, just 1 goal. So he'd be, realistically, if he doesn't get bonus, picking up maybe like 6, so 12 points for a captain. Is it worth it? I don't know. This is where I'm starting to have doubts. And what this kind of no Haaland draft allows you to do is getting players who are putting up very, very similar, or even better in the case of Cole Palmer, data per 90 and points per 90 that outshone Erling Haaland last season. Now, I know he obviously missed quite a few games, and he was dealing with injuries and stuff like that, and he might be a new player, but it looks like he potentially could be dealing with another injury issue this season in pre-season, coming off early in their last pre-season game for Manchester City. And what I think this team has allowed me to do is getting a lot of players that could very easily match or replicate the points that Haaland, captain, going every single week for him, would be able to make up. And I think the big part of that for me is going to be Mohamed Salah. As you can see on the top, realistically, he represents the best captaincy option over the 5 game weeks for me as a whole, to be honest. The opening game week, best captaincy option. Second game week, he's the second best captain option for my team. Third game week, he is level with Erling Haaland, despite it being Manchester United. But again, if they start the season off pretty tepid and obviously have a poor defensive record again, could be a very decent shout. We've obviously got Ollie Watkins as well with Leicester away. If they're looking pretty wobbly, could be a great shout for the armband there. Game week 4, again, Forest at home and Brentford at home. Pretty decent fixtures for both players. Again, you'd probably argue that Mohamed Salah slightly edges it. Might get a clean sheet point with Liverpool being at home. So again, gives him that slight edge over Erling Haaland. And then game week 5. Salah again, the best player. You've obviously got Son in there with Brentford as well, probably coming in at second place. But this is what I mean. Outside of game week 2 and game week 4, but game week 4 is very, very tight and could be a flip of a coin. Haaland, for me, over the 5 game weeks, is not representing a clear and obvious captain option. Like, he's just not, is he? Like, the game week 3 one's a little bit debatable, but that's the way I'm thinking at the moment. Obviously, I've been quite hot on Haaland because I think he represents a decent captaincy option. But the more and more I look at predicted points and data and stuff like that, I am starting to lean against it and starting to look at utilising the money elsewhere to build an absolute mammoth midfield with 2 forwards up top as well, who were very, very good last season in Alexander Isak and Watkins. And I'm expecting to have pretty decent seasons again. And throwing in Dominic Solanke to the mix when obviously one of the players' fixtures does dip away as well. I think realistically we could potentially make up the Erling Haaland points that he would be getting in the aggregate and switching around the captaincy around these top players that have been delivering exceptional points margins throughout the course of the season. So that's currently where my head is at. Let me know what you think about that one as well. I know a lot of top managers are currently thinking that way as well, without going with Erling Haaland in the opening few game weeks, looking at utilising the plethora of quality that we do have in the midfield. But let me know, guys, down in the comment section below. Let me know if you feel the same way that I do. Let me know if any of the data that I've included in today's video has helped you potentially change your mind on any decisions. And like I said, if you did enjoy any of the content, be sure to like, comment and subscribe. But thank you very much for watching today, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck in game week 1.